Hi everyone, I am Subashini M and I am the Associate Medical Director at Aviva Health and Protection.
And hello, I'm Antell and I'm the Head of Propositions at Aviva Health and Protection. Today we're here to talk about Aviva's Age of Ambiguity research paper. When we say ambiguity, we mean a blurring of the lines in our lives to the point it becomes difficult to distinguish between two things we previously could. Aspects of our lives start overlapping and there's a lack of clarity around what lies ahead. Now, it's human nature to desire a level of certainty in our lives, and research shows certainty is strongly linked to happiness and conversely uncertainty to stress. Multiple studies show that in general terms, we prefer certainty over uncertainty, even when the outcome is negative. So we'd rather have an expected electric shock now than potentially be shocked later when we're not expecting it. In any case, we must accept that ambiguity is a part of life in both a micro and a macro sense, and this is becoming inevitable in the workplace of the future. This has only been intensified by COVID-19, where home and work boundaries have dissolved, and the idea of job security will likely become more blurred for many. At the start of 2020, our research showed 41% of workers felt the boundaries between work and home life are becoming increasingly blurred. This has now risen to 51% from research conducted in August.
Well, since you've got a medic in the virtual room, I can't walk past my instinct to first start by defining things. Ambiguity is actually a concept that has been researched in relation to mental health and well-being. In the world of academia, ambiguity is the stimulus that can elicit a range of response from the ability to tolerate a lack of reliable, credible, or adequate information to intolerance to ambiguity resulting in stress and mental health conditions. This intolerance to uncertainty can be rather stressful for those who prefer some level of control in our lives, which in turn has an impact on well-being. Now, well-being is a dynamic state in which an individual is able to develop their potential, work productively and creatively, build strong and positive relationships with others, and contribute to their community. It comprises of three distinct parts. Firstly, what we experience, both positive and negative emotions. Secondly, how satisfied we are with our lives. And thirdly, how meaningful or worthwhile we feel our lives to be. Of course, the workplace can be a source of both joy and energy, and stress and frustration. For example, I met my husband at my previous workplace, and it has definitely contributed to my positive well-being, mostly. For many, it provides job satisfaction, and in fact, depending on whether you have found your passion, for some, it can bring meaning and purpose to our lives. The research we commissioned at Aviva showed that over half of employees surveyed didn't mind working beyond their contracted hours because it gave them a sense of fulfillment. The happy, productive worker theory links this feeling of well-being with greater productivity. Our recent research has shown that 70% of employees with good mental well-being having 4 to 5 good days at work in a week, compared to only 26% who have poor mental well-being. Even before this age of ambiguity was thrust upon us, burnout was an issue that we collectively faced. This always-on culture and blurring of work life was a key concern for many employers and employees. In fact, 4 in 10 agreed that they could never switch off from work. We've seen this being reflected in the presenteeism statistic of 1 in 5 employees working 6 or more days in the last 3 months while ill. It was only last year that burnout was finally added to the World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon. The clinical psychologists have firmly passed on the burden of burnout to employers, as it's now officially defined as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So now that the source and solution is in the workplace, it is worth just reminding ourselves of the symptoms of burnout. Typical signs of burnout include working long hours, too many priorities, lack of participation, negative attitude, making mistakes, difficulty concentrating, and forgetfulness. If not managed effectively, burnout can become chronic in nature, affecting both the health and performance of employees at all levels. Moreover, if it isn't addressed, burnout can increase the chance of employees developing mental health conditions. With all this in mind, it is worrying that 1/3 felt that their employer doesn't spot when they are stressed and have too much on. So more needs to be done.
At Aviva internally, we're addressing this through our Wellbeing at Aviva program, where we look at well-being in 4 key areas: be healthy, be secure, be awesome, and be mindful. Within Be Mindful, the focus is identifying and preventing employee burnout. We offer free access to services which support their lifestyle, such as Aviva Wellbeing app and mindfulness support through the Headspace app, through to much more clinically led support via our mental health pathway. We also provide mental health training specifically for our leaders to equip them with the skills to spot employee stress and have positive conversations with them.
From a physiological and psychological perspective, we are all equipped with the ability to deal with stressful situations. We utilize something called surge capacity, which is a collection of adaptive systems, mental and physical, that humans draw on for short-term survival in acutely stressful situations, such as natural disasters. But natural disasters occur over a short period, even if recovery is long. Pandemics are entirely different. The disaster itself stretches out indefinitely. So this external stressor, which is throwing up multiple unknowns for an indefinite amount of time, is really difficult to adjust to. A professor of family social science, Pauline Boss, mentions this concept of ambiguous loss, which is any loss that's unclear and lacks a resolution, being something that might be able to explain the occasional feelings of helplessness and hopelessness we are experiencing. We have, after all lost something during this pandemic, be it routine, a loved one, or just normality, however we define it to be. I have been talking about different concepts and theories, but real life is not so neatly explained. I want to take your memory back to a simpler time, in 2015, when we all had this ferocious internet argument over whether a striped dress pictured on Tumblr was white and gold or blue and black. Regardless of what you saw, what was apparent was that the same object can be perceived as being a different color by different people, depending on the assumptions their brains make about the background lighting. Likewise, we are all experiencing this pandemic and lockdown together, but how we're perceiving it, how we respond to it, and how affected by it is an individual and subjective experience, which is heavily influenced by an individual's situation, life experience, and personality. There is some evidence showing that women are disproportionately affected by the lockdown, particularly those entering maternity leave. People of ethnic minority origin are more impacted by the virus itself, and people with carrying responsibilities are being more stretched than they already were. Not to mention those who have either starting their careers or are retiring during this lockdown, doing so in a time of great uncertainty. Those of us who are privileged enough to be at work might look on with envy at the free time those who are furloughed have available to them. But those who are furloughed will inevitably experience heightened emotional insecurity and financial strain. The grass can often appear greener from the other side. As multifaceted individuals, we all have different stresses and our individualized way of responding to it. I often say to my daughter that we should aspire for progress, not for perfection, as that is how we constantly improve and achieve the benefits of marginal gains. The series of choices that we make individually and collectively is what makes the workplace and society what it is today. I have listed some of the challenges we have to overcome and a theoretical framework to build the solutions on. So, what does progress look like for the employer in this age of ambiguity? If we were to consider this from a workplace environment, we need to think of the 3 areas that could affect someone's mental health. These are employee well-being, employee health, and the working practices themselves. To go into more detail, I shall hand you over to Ali to delve a little deeper into this.
To begin, I want to consider how well-being has become more hidden during the pandemic, and businesses have been forced into following a certain way of working. In this new normality, there are a few employer-led and external factors that we should consider for our employees to keep their productivity up. Employer-led factors could include how equipment and technology is set up, how offices can be open in a safe and hygienic way, flexible working practices, and updating travel policies. The external factors could include how to support a positive home environment, maintaining good work-life balance, plus driving a culture of positive mental and physical well-being. Equally, getting lower productivity can be a result of employer-led factors such as a lack of social cohesion, isolation from colleagues and the business as offices are empty, and inevitably job and financial insecurity. Or external factors like employees' caring responsibilities, and again, isolation, loneliness, and job insecurity. To remove the ambiguity that employees feel, you don't only need to address the world they work in, but you need to support their physical, mental, and financial well-being too. Consistently, we hear from our customers that physical, mental, and financial are the three primary elements of an individual's well-being. Employers should therefore consider these services and support they provide across all of these three themes. The physical services that Aviva offer fall into two types. The first one is giving access to experts such as GPs and physios in a virtual environment. And the second one is helping people take control of their own physical well-being through daily monitoring, tracking, and supporting lifestyle changes. Aviva's mental services again focus on giving access to experts through services like the Mental Health Pathway and Employee Assistance Programme. It's all about allowing people to talk when and how they wish to. A new development is focusing on people leaders in organisations, educating them on mental health and how they can support their employees more effectively. And in financial, there are again two clear types of service we provide. Short-term support on things such as managing debt and monthly budgets, and this is a huge cause of stress and anxiety for many individuals. And longer-term financial thinking, specifically about preparing and saving for retirement. Each business needs to think carefully about what their well-being services are trying to achieve. Not only improving the physical, mental, and financial well-being of their employees, but how can they build resilience, which can ultimately lead to better productivity? The ways of working for a company like Aviva in a post-COVID world will change significantly. We'll see many more employees working flexibly, sharing their time between home and the office. What's going to be vital is making sure everyone has easy access to mental and emotional support. Plus, they have the equipment needed to do their jobs while working remotely, and their home environments are safe and comfortable, so they can carry out their roles productively and without any difficulty. Now, what we've talked about today was mainly from our research findings from early 2020. We've just finalised rerunning the same research to look at the differences in findings in a post-COVID world. If you'd like a copy of the latest research, please speak to our team in the virtual booth. We're now going to move on to take any questions. Moderator, please can we have the first question?
Thanks, Ali and Suba. Some really interesting insights and sharings from that latest research. I think just to start with, Ali, could you just confirm when the latest Age of Ambiguity research will be available and how our attendees can access that?
Yeah, sure. So that will be available from the first week in November. We're just finalising all of the finer details. Probably the best place to go will be on the REBA website, where there'll be a direct link to the report. But you can also go to aviva.co.uk, or you could ask your usual Aviva contact to send it directly to you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So we've had a question that's come in here, Suba, saying we've seen more of our employees becoming stressed and experiencing burnout for obvious issues, but what would be the key things that we should be looking at to address this now, particularly looking at another second wave over the next 6 months of lockdown type restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things to kind of highlight is that we've been talking about burnout even before COVID-19 hit us, right? I mean, we've kind of seen a big cultural shift towards having this always on piece, and the demands of modern life has taken its toll on us. So the pandemic basically just kind of almost really made us focus on this issue that was already there. So from my perspective, I think there are probably 4 steps that you could look at. So the first step is really to identify it. From an individual perspective, do you know when you're stressed? Do you know when the stress is delivering good performance versus when it's actually kind of causing you burnout? And that's important from an individual perspective. It's also important from an employer's perspective. So when Ali mentioned, that's a hidden issue with virtual workplaces. Are you able to spot the signs of burnout in your team and your colleagues? The second step is really trying to understand the root cause of it. So quite a lot of us might experience burnout, but it might not necessarily stem from the workplace, but it manifests in the workplace. So really try to be curious about looking at it from that individual's perspective and be compassionate when you're trying to address it. The third step is to, we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's available to us, different initiatives, different benefits, different programs. So really take stock of what you actually have and how, and are people able to access it should they require to. So really just take stock of what you've got. And the last step is really to make sure there's alignment in your approach, right? So, and this is where the culture piece comes in. So you can't talk about well-being and mental health and then set, ridiculous deadlines or maintain an always-on culture. So the tone from the top has to kind of align with everything else you do. So it's about not just talking the talk, walking the walk as well.
Brilliant. And I've had another question here that says it's related to this news that we'll now be probably working at home for another 6 months. How can employers balance the risk of those who live alone incurring mental wellbeing issues versus the risk of letting people back into the office? What's the best duty of care in that scenario?
Yeah, so I'll take that first, and then Suba, perhaps you want a comment as well. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a risk now of almost getting into lockdown fatigue for many people. So I think the initial period of time we all dealt with, some of us better than others, but the general perception, certainly we've seen in the research, was that people felt that the worst was over. So to be going back into a partial lockdown scenario, especially for those living at home on their own, I think will be really challenging. What I would say is that it makes human contact even more important. So because people aren't getting that face-to-face, things like team meetings, virtual coffee mornings, the provision of one-to-ones really becomes even more vital when people are working from home. And it also allows our leaders to try and understand the well-being of those individuals. We've talked again here in the video about the hidden well-being with everybody working from home. So really having as much face time, even though it's via screens, as possible with each of your employees, I think is absolutely vital.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think one of the issues is, like we said, we anticipated this to finish, and we kind of say, oh, when the new normal happens, then things will be back to, or we can deal with it. But I suppose the question we need to all ask ourselves is, what if this is the new normal? And you kind of like manage your expectations to say, we don't know how long this will last for, so we're not going to wait for this period of time where everything will be better. Let's try and focus on what we can do. And the point of social isolation is really key. And again, loneliness and social isolation has been a key issue even before the pandemic. And again, the pandemic's really shone a light on that. That individualized approach is important, right? So my husband has been socially distancing himself from the world for a long time. So he actually likes the fact that no one's speaking to him and he doesn't have to chat to anyone. So loneliness is what that person perceives, and actually it's making sure that they have people that they want to speak to available to them. Maybe the line manager might be the last person they want to speak to. So again, is having that conversation and making sure that they have that support, be it from you or someone else that they want to hear from or be in touch with.
Brilliant. So we've got about 30 seconds left. So I guess really just the final question is around what would be the key learning you would take from the last 6 months as we move forward into the next 6 for employers, and how they can best support employees in this next phase?
Wow, 30 seconds. Yeah, very quickly. I think that don't ever underestimate the strain of the situation is putting on individuals, and often it's the individuals that you think are most resilient who could be struggling the most. So don't assume. Try and understand as much as possible.
Yeah,
no,
and
I
guess
think that's great advice.
The only thing I would add on to that is compassion is key. Just be kind to yourself, to everybody else around you. That's fundamental.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. I mean, lots of interesting perspectives and a lot for everybody to think about as we go into the next 6 months into 2021. I think that's it. So I'd like to say thanks very much for your time this morning. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes on Live Stage 1 and 2 with our next speaker sessions. So remember, if you're changing stages, do go into my itinerary on the left-hand navigation menu to access your next session. Thanks both.